When I was growing up in Mercer, this was the witch's tree.
Legend has it the men of the borough found a witch was practicing dark magic in the Mercer Citizens Cemetery in the 1800s. They took matters into their own hands and put the witch to death by hanging. But they made a tragic mistake.
They gave her a chance to say her final words. Never give the witch final words, because she said, "I curse you all, and this tree will mark my death by turning to stone. I will come back and snatch one of your children every October."
However, Bill Filson, executive director of the Mercer County Historical Society, knows the real story behind this unique headstone.
There was an insurance company called Woodsman of the World, still in existence today. At one time, they gave a headstone to everybody that owned a life insurance policy with them. If you walk around this cemetery and you go to most other cemeteries, you find a log or something that looks like a log there. Those are all given by the Woodsman of the World. I imagine this one's about 7.5 feet tall. The lady that owned it must have been a policyholder for a long time.
And there's no shortage of stories to be found in Mercer Citizens Cemetery, which began in the 1860s and is still used to this day. This portion of the cemetery is the GAR plot, or the Grand Army of the Republic plot.
This grave right here is the grave of Louis Francis Brest. He's the only Mercer-Countian we know won the Congressional Medal of Honor during the Civil War. One of the things about the GAR, in Pennsylvania, we didn't allow African Americans to join the Union Army until 1863. A man by the name of John Armour Bingham, he was born and raised here in Mercer. He helped propose a law that allowed African Americans to join Army units here. And the GAR took that to an extreme. They did not hold your race against you like other people might. You go 3 doors down. 1, 2, 3, and this is William Ford. If you notice there it says USCT, United States Colored Troop. He's buried amongst his white brothers here in the Grand Army of the Republic lot.
But the GAR is only a small portion of the cemetery.
Samuel Scott, U.S. Colored Troops. This isn't in the GAR plot. He chose to be buried here. This is a Sloss family. They were chair makers here in town. This is a headstone of Robert Sylvester Reed. He fought in the 55th Massachusetts.
On the other side of the grounds, there's a plot of graves with the family name Stokely. This particular grave is that of Benjamin Stokely, who died in 1815, but he didn't get buried in this cemetery until the 1980s.
He was the first man, apparently, that came to Mercer and spent the winter here in 1798. His grave used to be on his family farm.
When his surviving relative could no longer keep up with the maintenance of the grave, he was disinterred so he can be placed with the rest of the family. When they started to dig, they found that he was in fact buried sitting up, as requested in his will.
Because he wanted to be able to look out over his land.
But had Stokely not wanted to be buried on his property, he might have been buried at the Old Mercer Graveyard on Erie Street. This cemetery dates back to Mercer's beginning and was established in 1804 as the first Presbyterian cemetery.
This is a stone of Reverend Samuel Tate.
Tate was the founder of the First Presbyterian Church.
They say he stood like 25 feet from his old altar. That used to be the church there that is now Shannon's Candy Kitchen. He gathered people together at the First Presbyterian Church, even people who claimed to be atheists. This is the Magoffin Burial. There you see James M. Magoffin, and you'll see his wife, Amanda, in a French bed headstone. And the kids, there's 2 or 3 children of the Magoffins that are buried right here in this one that looks like a bassinet. Gives you an idea of how they thought about death at one time or another.
Many of the headstones have worn over time to where you can barely make out the engraving. But this one for George Wright Jr., who died in 1816, seems perfectly preserved.
This stone here wasn't upright a few years ago. It had fallen forward. All the acid rain had fallen on top. All the dirt had collected on top, the acid-filled dirt. And this one, because it had fallen this way, was spared all the indignities of that. Now, if you look back through here, you'll see a lot of empty spaces that probably at one time had headstones. The headstones are probably there. They're just buried. Time has a different meaning in cemeteries. I can get lost in a cemetery and be there for hours and not even realize it.
Tonight, starting at 7 p.m. at the Mercer County Historical Society, Filson will be hosting a lantern light tour in the borough, featuring the Old Mercer Graveyard. If you'd like to attend, you can find more information at mchspa.org.
It preserves the memory of a loved one. You don't just forget people when they're gone, but I think it has more to do with love than with death and preserving history.